We've seen the threat from foreign terrorists rise to a whole nother level. This is by no means a time to let up or dial back. Now, on top of that, increasingly concerning is the potential for a coordinated attack here in the homeland.
When I look at where a lot of these people are going to, I'm not seeing 9/11. I'm seeing the possibility of multiple 9/11s. That right there is what I'm seeing
right now.
I believe that we have to have a better plan. The migrants right here are using a lot of our services, crowding our streets, and aren't allowed to work. It's a desperate situation.
I don't think we have the capacity to hold all those people, in a sense.
Gee, I wonder why it is that 60% of the American people at this moment in time want mass deportations.
That finds majority favor. That finds 6 in 10. It's strongest among folks who are MAGA. It's strongest among Trump supporters, but also from some Democrats as well. And I think that speaks.
That right there was just the small bit from a CBS poll that was released this past weekend, where apparently the liberal media was astonished to find out that a good portion of the American people want mass deportations. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you why it is that this right here is more than believable. And guess what? Probably 100% accurate. Now, before we talk about mass deportations, I need to go ahead and say this before we get started. Mass deportations on the surface seems like it's not realistic. It just seems that way, but in reality, it can actually be done, and it is actually cheaper than actually housing more and more migrants. The question then becomes, though, how many migrants have actually crossed the border and how many people have Joe Biden let in, and exactly who has Joe Biden let in the process, which, by the way, we're going to be discussing at length in this video here. But the next question is that how long would it actually take to remove all the people that, let's just say, quite frankly, shouldn't be here? Now, I can already tell you right now that YouTube is probably going to go out of its way to how do I say, yellow mark this video, meaning that they want to remove the ads on or keep the ads at a minimum, even though I'm not going to be saying anything that goes against the community guideline standards. But I'm here to go ahead and tell you guys right now, it's a question that many people have been thinking about for the past year or two, because they automatically think to themselves, wow, that's a lot of people to send back across the border. I'm the type of person that if you actually put a border wall up and you actually reinforce said border crossings will go down a great amount. However, given the fact that the Russians now have submarines off the coast of Cuba at this moment in time, it seems to me like something big could in fact be on its way. I really love how it is that the mainstream media and the Democratic Party kept on telling us that Trump was going to start a war with Iran, and not only Trump was going to start a war with Iran, but they also kept on telling us that, he was bought and paid for by the Russians, yet ever since Joe Biden has been in office, the Ukraine war has broken out. That happened a year into his administration. We had a colonial pipeline. You guys remember that incident where we got hacked. Next thing you know, the price of gas is through the roof, damn near $5 to $6 a gallon in some places. Some places it was actually 8 or 9. Go talk to people in California. And of course, also to go on top of this, everything that's going on in the Middle East right now happened on Biden's watch. And of course, Russia's got submarines off our coast. I'm just saying that all the mainstream media, all their bluster about Trump being a Russian agent, obviously this right here did not turn out to be true. Just saying. Let us go ahead and get into the data. So the poll was released. It was gone over on CBS. It was Face the Nation. Of course, this happened on Sunday. I want to say it was Face the Nation, but still it happened on Sunday morning. And of course, the co-anchor, when she got this information, was obviously a little bit baffled by what it was that she was seeing.
Say are important to voters. The border's one of them. President Biden did issue an executive order this past week. It authorizes U.S. officials to deport large numbers of migrants without processing asylum claims until the border crossings number dips below 1,500. So it's essentially suspending some of the asylum processing. Trump's been perceived as stronger on the border. Does this change anything?
No, Trump still is. More people think that Donald Trump's policies would stop or slow border crossings more than Biden's. Having said that, there is widespread support when we test in general terms for what President Biden just did. He gets 7 in 10 support on that. It's overwhelming among Republicans. It's also strong among Democrats. Look, context there. People have said they think that the border is in crisis for a long time. Having said that, You know, we have a lot of the campaign rhetoric speaking of what people say they would do. You've seen the Trump campaign talking about mass deportations.
I've talked about Biden's executive order in a previous video. This video here will be linked in the description box. I advise you guys go check it out because even Bill Maher basically said that, look, it's a little bit too late. And also to go on top of that, that executive order is coming after you broke the toy, after you screwed up the issue. Now you're trying to tell people that you're fixing it, but when you actually go into the executive order itself, you find out that it's actually just as bad, if not worse in some cases, than the actual border being open. So once again, it's too little too late. People don't forget. I'm just simply saying. Now, before I respond to all of that, I want to go back to a previous video that I did. And said previous video that I did, we talked about migrants taking over Times Square. And what I mean by taking over Times Square, I'm talking about migrants who thought it was a good idea to go protest in Times Square. And of course, some of the complaints that they had was that they wanted more money, meaning that they wanted the taxpayer to shell out more money. A lot of these tax dollars, by the way, are coming from these very, very big blue cities, which, by the way, are in fact full of Democrats, which makes you wonder exactly what's going to happen this election cycle. Are they going to switch their vote? Are they going to vote third party, or are they just going to stay at home? I think it's probably going to be a split in 3 directions out of 4 because I don't believe that they're all going to be voting for Trump. I got to be 100% realistic about that. But then again, at the same time, though, if it does split off to third party, the next thing you know, Joe Biden's national vote count actually goes down. But also something else you got to understand. Conservatives like myself, we don't need the popular vote to win. All we need is the Electoral College. But still, that's a different conversation altogether. The point is this right here. People are beginning to get fed up with the tax side of this. They don't want to see their tax dollars keep going to this. And also, there's also security risk that many people, for whatever reason, just quite frankly love to ignore. And by the way, the party that's allowing all the migrants in, they're definitely complicit in that. But we'll get to that a little bit later on in the video. But let's take a look at this. Let's go back in time and actually look at exactly what happened.
Over 200 day laborers and low-wage workers, many of them migrants, danced and rallied in Manhattan's Herald Square Thursday around a giant shipping container they say is a symbol of the border wall.
Somos más. We are more. That's what we are here right now.
From the taxi drivers to the laborers putting the blocks on every buildings we see here in this country, we say we are more.
It comes after President Joe Biden's executive action this week significantly restricting asylum at the U.S.-Mexico border, temporarily closing it if a daily average of 2,500 is met.
4 years ago, when he was running for president, he said he was going to support the immigrant community.
The immigrant community is under attack by both parties.
Earlier Thursday at City Hall, city, state, and federal officials introduced legislation to repeal sanctuary city status they say will address public safety concerns. They also weighed in on the border executive order.
A little too late.
I don't know if you guys caught it or not, but you had migrants out there who were actually upset with the fact that Biden was not being pro-immigrant enough. I've talked about this issue, especially when it comes to the Israeli-Gaza situation, the war between Jews and the Palestinians. I've talked about that before and how it is that Biden's been trying to play both sides of the aisle, and quite frankly, it's not working. He can't get both sides to come to an agreement, which, by the way, when you try to play both sides of the aisle, it never works. It always ends in disaster. And one would automatically assume, or one would automatically think to themselves, if you actually look at said polling data, which, by the way, this actually polls not as bad as you might would think amongst Democrat voters, that they would also like mass deportations as well. Now, we'll talk about exactly how you do mass deportations here really soon, but let's go ahead and get back to said data.
In principle, would you support a new government program that would deport all people living in the U.S. illegally? And that finds majority favor. That finds 6 in 10. It's strongest among folks who are MAGA. It's strongest among Trump supporters, but also from some Democrats as well. And I think that that speaks to the general idea, not just that people see the border as a crisis, but also where we are in the campaign, where a lot of very dramatic or new proposals out there are finding favor here.
So unpack that a bit, because this 62% of Americans favor deporting all undocumented immigrants. So Homeland Security says that President Biden has already deported or repatriated more people in the past year than any year since 2010. And then, depending on the details of what's talked about on the campaign trail, some of what Mr. Trump talks about could be illegal.
62% want all undocumented immigrants out. I actually think the total is a little bit higher. Typically, what polls do is that they shape public opinion. They're typically a few points off, but still at the same time, though, that's a pretty high number of people who want all the undocumented immigrants out, not just those who are coming across the border. Now, look, let me say this real quick. I can already hear somebody saying you're just some racist, misogynist, xenophobic guy. And I've made a lot of videos on the border issue, and I did say that at one point in time it was going to be a great big giant video essay on exactly how immigration actually affects everything. And I've also told people that I'm not against legal immigration. I'm actually very much in favor of legal immigration, but illegal immigration has got to stop. I used to be a little bit more lenient on the issue, but let me go ahead and say this really quick. One of the reasons why Trump's Hispanic numbers have gone up, and I've talked about this in a previous video that I did about why Hispanics were coming to Trump, was two reasons. Those who are from nations that are not named Mexico are looking at what's going on with the trials and all that type of stuff there, and they think that communism is on its way because these people obviously have ancestral roots back to communistic nations, where it is those who are Mexican are starting to actually turn around and starting to support the former president because of the fact that a lot of these people have actually been here for a while. A lot of these people actually went through the process after breaking the law. Like I said, you can't really punish them after the fact. And like I said, I'm not in favor of punishing them after the fact. I'm in favor of taking care of this issue at the border right now and deporting those who, quite frankly, have come over here recently and should not be here. And those who are still in the system need to remain in the system so that way they could possibly still get their green cards, their citizenship, all that type of stuff there. A lot of these people are looking at the situation with the border and they're pissed. They're pissed off about the fact that Biden is offering free health care and all this other free crap and jobs to people who, quite frankly, should not be here, and even citizenship, too. Basically, what's going on here is that these people are hopping the line, and, of course, a lot of people who live here who've actually been waiting or are still in the process, they're looking at these people jump ahead. So, yes, even some illegals out there are not in favor of illegal immigration. Democrats, by the way, think these people are stupid. They think these people are ignorant, but in reality, they are not. I've talked about this in previous videos, and I'll continue to talk about other videos in much, much more detail. But let's look at that data, or the last bit of that data, one more time.
It'd be illegal. It doesn't seem practical in some sense to round up children. And then we know that the courts have questioned whether local authorities would have the ability to do it. And federal authorities don't have the resources. So what exactly do people think they're supporting?
Well, when you measure public sentiment on this or really just about any policy, you're getting a sense of direction. You're getting broad brushstrokes. But those kinds of details, well, that's often up to the legislatures and the courts later on. We tested even the idea of should local law enforcement be involved in this? And a lot of folks do say yes. Again, the details of that, the specific.
Now, on the surface, you're probably thinking to yourself, how the hell does local law enforcement get these illegals out? Well, this where it kind of brings me to this Fox News segment that came out involving Greg Gutfeld, and of course the conversation that was had on Capitol Hill with Christopher Wray. Now, you guys are seeing some stuff here in the B-roll footage. This where it came from a little interview segment that people had in the city of New York. And it's really, really odd, too, how it is that some people, quite frankly, didn't even think there was an issue going on. But there's also a lot of people in this segment, which, by the way, I'll link in the description box, of people who were saying that obviously the issue needed to be cleaned up. It obviously needed to be fixed, and people were not exactly happy with migrants getting so much ahead of those who actually live in the city, who are actual citizens of the country, people who actually were born and raised here. And obviously it's going to create some forms of jealousy. I've talked about this in a previous video. I've also talked about how it is that minority communities were not going to take well to brand new migrants. We've talked about Chicago, and we've talked about the issues that's going on there in several videos, and I'm pretty sure we'll be coming back to it at some point in time. The point is this right here. These people, or people themselves, are starting to say, hey, look, these people have got to go, okay? It's too much resources. The price of everything is through the roof. And even though the mainstream media loves to tell you that the price of everything is going down, that is not seen to be the case. Down the road, Walmart, gas was $3.02 a gallon. That right there was what, 2 weeks ago? Now it's back up at $3.26. I'm pretty sure some of you guys at home are probably saying, daggone, man, only $3 a gallon. At this moment in time, it's $5 or $6. Dude, the price of gas when Obama was in office, for most of the time he was in, was close to $3 a gallon. And then, of course, with Biden, it's gotten as high as $6 a gallon. When Trump was in office, for the most part, it was between $1.60 and $2.15. If you're thinking to yourself, wow, $3 a gallon is kind of cheap, then that right there is kind of the problem here. The price of gas should be below $2 a gallon, maybe even a little bit lower than $1.50. That right there is what I'm saying. That right there is where we need to get back to, not down to 3 from 6, just saying. If local law enforcement itself is tasked with illegal immigration, it's probably going to create a problem, meaning that you're probably not going to have enough room to take care of crime. So I'm thinking you're probably going to have to use the National Guard to help round people up if that right there is the case. However, I don't think it's going to happen the way you might think, especially given this new information that came out, which, by the way, people like myself have, in fact, been sounding the alarm on about the possibility of terrorists and the possibility of another 9/11, and leave it to Fox News, a network that everybody just calls extremely biased, when in reality, every single news outlet is biased as hell, to kind of sound the alarm once again.
Before Joe Biden's border crisis leads to a devastating terror attack after 8 migrants with ISIS ties were arrested in sting operations in cities like Philadelphia, Los Angeles, and New York City. All hail from Tajikistan, which is a hotbed of radical Islamic terror. According to DHS, the 8 suspects each received a, quote, full vetting upon arrival, with nothing derogatory flagged initially. Their terror ties surfaced later. One suspect tested the Biden border app during his stay. The New York Post reported that federal wiretaps revealed one of the arrested individuals was discussing bombs. Just 8 days ago, the FBI director was warning about coordinated attacks.
I want to go ahead and say this. Most people cannot find Tajikistan on a map. Most people can't find the country of Kyrgyzstan on a map. Most people can't find the country of Uzbekistan on a map. Most people can't find the country Turkmenistan on a map, or Pakistan, or Afghanistan, or Kazakhstan. The Stand Nations have some of the most extreme Islamic caliphates. You don't typically tend to hear about these nations because they're, for the most part, uneventful. But they're some of the most deeply rooted religious, as far as when it comes to Islam, nations in the world. I've been saying for a while that this right here was a security issue. If you keep having these people come in, of course, if they keep going to these big cities, which, by the way, I do appreciate Greg Abbott sending most of these migrants to like New York and Chicago, so that way you can red pill some leftists. But these other ones who kind of slip through the cracks, who, by the way, do intend harm on the United States of America, that way there's a different problem altogether. So rounding up these people or deporting them is going to require a lot more than just local law enforcement. But let's look at this next part.
We've seen the threat from foreign terrorists rise to a whole nother level. This is by no means a time to let up or dial back. Now, on top of that, increasingly concerning is the potential for a coordinated attack here in the homeland. We have seen over the last 5 to 6 years an increase in the number of known or suspected terrorists, in other words, watch-listed subjects attempting to cross the border.
And remember when Biden claimed to crack down on the border? Well, the guys on the ground say it isn't the case.
Does it frustrate you when you hear that, when you hear the narrative, like, why aren't Border Patrol doing anything? And
our hands are tied. If I don't allow them to cross and they call and complain, now I'm in trouble. I'm going to lose my job.
Now, speaking of what Ray was saying there, and I'm no fan of Christopher Ray, there was a terror alert that was issued for the month of June in some of these bigger cities. You know, the cities where they have the pride marches and stuff. By the way, these Sunni Muslims, they don't exactly like gays. They don't exactly like that community. They view that community as extremely immoral, and they have different ways of treating them in other nations that, by the way, most liberal and leftists don't seem to understand happens. It's almost like the liberal and leftist mindset is that we can just go overseas and be ourselves and not get any type of consequences. I've already said that the biggest problem with the left in the country, or the biggest problem with people on the left, is the fact that they don't exactly believe in self-reflection. They don't exactly believe in self-accountability. They just don't. I mean, just look at what they do. They get pregnant, boom, abort the baby. We'll use abortion as birth control. There are other examples that I, quite frankly, can use to kind of help explain this. But, of course, if you've been on the online world, you notice that conservatives can't exactly say what the hell they want, where liberals, on the other hand, kind of can. It's got to do with the fact that a lot of these people have never actually really and truly been punished, nor have they ever really and truly been spanked. Just saying. Go back to what I opened the video with. I see multiple 9/11s possibly happening as a result of this. And I think people are starting to wake up to this. And they're starting to say to themselves that maybe that orange guy, while he was extremely unpredictable and while it was he had a lot of mean tweets, I think we were a lot safer under him than what we are under the doddering old fool that we have in office at this moment in time, who, quite frankly, craps himself every chance he gets. The fact of the matter is this right here, though. There do need to be mass deportations, but there also needs to be massive amounts of vetting to go along with this. We need to see exactly where it is these people came from, so that way we can actually put out an advisory to people saying no more people from these countries here. I remember back when Trump was running for president, and even I thought this right here was wrong. And of course, me being the Trump voter, I'm here telling you guys that obviously I can criticize the guy because there are people out there on the left who don't think that we criticize the man at all when we actually constantly criticize him. The thing is this right here. He had that whole Muslim ban. That right there is what he was talking about. And of course, that Muslim ban seemed a little bit too extreme, even though there were some prominent personalities. One of them, of course, was actually Muhammad Ali, that actually somewhat agreed with Donald Trump in his statement. The truth be told is what he should have actually said was those from certain nations, which, by the way, he eventually would, in fact, implement. And of course, we didn't have anybody else coming in from these nations. And of course, the country was a little bit more secure. The fact of the matter is this right here. What the Democratic Party has done by opening up the border is that they have put this country in a massive morass. And now people have finally woken up and they've seen exactly how chaotic it can get. And they want these people gone. It's not just economical, which, by the way, is a different conversation altogether, which, of course, I will do in my immigration video essay. But in reality, it's really more or less security reasons. I've talked about the crime. I've talked about the fact that certain groups are not going to get along with certain groups. You've seen that in previous videos that I've done, especially the ones where we talk about Chicago, where you have blacks fighting with Hispanics and Hispanics fighting with blacks in town hall meetings. Eventually, at some point in time, it's going to get to the streets, and it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be, quite frankly, pretty dang old ugly. And, of course, we're going to look at the situation, and we're going to say, we told you so. By the way, it's not just those cities. It's also St. Louis, a blue city in a red state. It's also Charlotte, a blue city in a red state. It's also Atlanta, a blue city in a relatively red state. It's also Philadelphia, a blue city in a purple state. It's also Denver, Colorado, a blue city in a blue state. I don't know if you guys kind of pick up on this. The vast majority of your big cities are, in fact, blue. By the way, these massively large cities, by the way, most of them have sanctuary city policies, and these people actually wanted these migrants. What I'm saying to you is that this entire situation is probably going to be a situation that's going to take a very, very long time for anybody to fix. And this was actually pointed out in the same exact Fox News segment by Dana Perino, which I'll link the section in the description box, where she said that no one president is ever going to be able to fix this problem. This right here is going to be a problem that we're going to be dealing with for a very, very long time. And because of the slippery nature of the people who have came in, that right there being those from the Middle East, it's going to be a while before we're able to actually properly vet these people and get them out. So yes, 60% of the American people, 62% is a number that I do in fact believe want these people removed, because obviously these people can now see the concerns that are having. And when you've got a doddering old fool in office who craps his pants every chance he gets, and now you've got submarines off the coast of Cuba, which, by the way, are technically off the coast of Florida, yeah, people are going to wake up. But you guys tell me what you think. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe. Please share the video. Please sign off in the comment section. And I'll see you guys later.